Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Friends. I'm Meredith Porte, and I get very excited. I was just talking about this when I come across people in my life who really do understand this importance of spirituality in their lives. And it can happen at any time. It can happen when you're young, and you come across somebody, or your parents show you something, or you meet someone at work, like it happened with me. It can happen anytime, but for Tony Cho, it happened in a pretty unusual way. Tony Cho is a very, very well-known a man in business in South Florida and beyond. His company is Metro One. He's a realtor, developer, commercial broker. I know I missed some things too, but he can fill us in on them. And he actually got involved with the spiritual life when he was quite young. And we're going to hear about that. And he's gone on, he stayed on the path. And yet, on his path, he's been able to live a life of just making an impact, whether it's the business world, whether it's helping people, lots of different ways. He has a vision. So, Tony, I'm thrilled to interview you, to be here.
And Meredith, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. And I think that I want to start with somebody so crucial to your spiritual path, your grandmother, whom I met many years ago, and I will share that later, Ma Jaya. So tell me about, she was really a spiritual teacher, leader of a whole spiritual organization, and we call her a guru, whatever. I met her, and she was so wise, so powerful. We'll talk about that later too, but tell me about what it was, how you lived, how you grew up, because she was there with you all the time, raising you, helping to raise you.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique upbringing that definitely helped shape me and inform who I am today at 45. I was adopted and raised by my grandmother, Ma Jaya, who was also originally born as Joyce Green. And, my parents were too young. And not really in a position to raise me. So she was, and she had a community that she started 2 years earlier called Kashi. At that point, it was Kashi Ranch, and then it became Kashi Ashram in Central Florida. And so I was born there on the community. I was raised there in community, and it was a very special and unique upbringing. And she adopted 4 other children, my brothers and sisters, and then of course we had a larger community of children that were raised on the ashram. I went to school at the ashram school, graduated valedictorian in a class of 5, and went off to Northwestern. And it was a very unique, special, and also had its challenges, but I believe that it played a big role of why I am so passionate about community and about people. And it certainly gave me an exposure to spirituality and a lot of different religions. And it was an interfaith community. So I had the privilege to meet a lot of other spiritual teachers, and including the Dalai Lama and many, many different leaders who had come through Kashi over the years. And it really helped shape who I am. And I learned a lot. As you said, my grandmother was a very wise and powerful woman. And I think the thing that really most impacted me growing up was the work that we did with service work with HIV and AIDS and underserved communities. And she always had this saying that I often quote, is that there's no throwaway people. And I think that really always resonated with me in working in many diverse communities around the globe now, and the work that I'm doing with Future of Cities with regenerative placemaking, which is all about inclusion, equity, and sustainability within the built environment.
So that's, to me, really interesting that what you grew up with, you kept with you. That has, like you say, informed you, inspired you to go on. So you weren't, you didn't really go into business just to be a businessman, and you have been super successful. You've done a lot, whether it comes to Wynwood, Little Haiti, many towns, many cities in what do you call them? Cities in South Florida, and you've moved north too with your work, with your businesses and everything. But did you know then that that you were going to be on a mission like you are now? Did you realize it then, or did it come later?
I mean, I think I was always motivated and ambitious, even as a kid, even to go leave the ashram and go to college and to be a trailblazer, which was not popular with my grandmother at the time, to fly the coop. But I mean, I've come full circle, and I don't know if you know this, but my wife and I launched an eco retreat, regenerative sanctuary and wellness center called Chosen. And we've actually acquired 34 acres from the ashram, which has helped the ashram stabilize financially and be able to put their core temples and religious places into a land trust. And now we are, we have 80 beds and a full functioning regenerative farm, a wellness center, miles of trails into nature, and really just focus on nature as our North Star and as our spiritual guiding point in a world that's suffering so much, mainly at the hands of religion. And, and this kind of distinction. And so I steer away from conversations about religion and really try to focus mainly on nature, because I think that othering has really created a lot of the division, within communities around the world.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Nature and just connecting to things that are really now natural. I mean, that's what nature's all about. It has a big effect. It has an effect on the spirit, the body. I have not been to Chosen, but I would love to visit sometime. But I was at your grandmother, your family's ashram many years ago when our spiritual leader, Daddy Janki, the head of the Brahma Kumaris, who has since passed away, was honored by your grandmother, Ma Jaya, as a great leader. And she came all the way from India to be with, and we were to be with your grandmother. And so there was a group of us that went up there. So I wanted to share one thing is that I went there and she invited other people, your grandmother, and there were people that I knew that were students of your grandmother, and I had no idea that they were studying with her. And it was like, oh my goodness, old friends of mine, people in my life, and we were all there together. So that felt like a real sense of community. Your grandmother, would you say she had the power? She had a lot of power, spiritual power, to bring people together and to share the knowledge that. And again, you can tell me about how she got all this knowledge and how did she study?
How did she get the knowledge, and how did she?
The knowledge of spiritual. Where did she learn what she went on to?
Well, I think she had no background or formal education, in school. When she was in her mid-30s, she was kind of going through like a early midlife crisis. She had 3 children. And she was overweight and she wanted to lose weight. So she started doing Jack LaLanne and yoga to lose weight. And as she reports in her autobiography, she would have to hide in the bathroom in her Brooklyn apartment from my grandfather, who was not, who was Roman Catholic. My father and my aunts were raised in a Catholic household, even though my grandmother was Jewish. And, she was meditating and doing breath work in the bathroom. And then, as she tells it, she started getting visions of Jesus Christ and Neem Karoli Baba, and other spiritual teachers would appear to her. So I think that was her first exposure to spirituality. And she thought she was going crazy. Her husband thought she was going crazy. And so she went to Mount Manresa and met with the Jesuit priests and told them her story. And, Christ, when he appeared to her, she said that he was missing a thumb. And then in the grotto in Mount Manresa, that Christ was missing a thumb. So the Jesuits had basically validated her vision. And then through Hilda Charlton, she had met Ram Dass, And,
Mm,
she had a relationship with Ram Dass. They taught together.
mm.
And then they had kind of a separation at the end. So there was a lot of history there. And then she became recognized as a spiritual teacher that was, channeling Neem Karoli Baba and other teachers. And she moved with her closest disciples down to Florida in the 70s and found this land with the seven-limbed tree, which is where Kashi is, and now where Chosen is. And
Mm.
so it's really a beautiful multi-generational evolution of our history of what's happened.
It's an absolutely beautiful place, and I feel that anyone that goes there, and I remember all the how she was respecting all the different religions with the different spiritual sculptures there, and saying something about the different religions. So it wasn't like she was rejecting anything. That's what I felt. She was just moving forward with the knowledge that she was gaining, and here you were, a little kid, right? Absorbing all of this. Are you constantly aware that you had a life? I mean, have a life, but I mean, had this earlier life that was quite different from most kids in the world? Or
Yeah,
was this
I
natural?
mean, well, I mean, it's interesting because when people ask me about my upbringing, I had a very rich and full upbringing that was filled with a lot of beauty and a lot of challenges and realizations. And, I didn't even know that I was adopted until I was 10 years old. And
Mm,
my grandmother remarried a Korean martial arts master named Master Susei Cho. That's
mm,
why my last name is Cho. I was actually the ring bearer in the wedding when I was 2. I have a photo of it, but I had no recollection of the wedding as a 2-year-old. And
sure.
so even at 10, I didn't even know that I was adopted because we lived in this it was a bubble. It was a bubble of acceptance and inclusion and a multi-diverse, multicultural, diverse community of people of all different shapes and sizes and beliefs. And so I thought nothing of, that my father looked, Asian. And, I found out through the harsh realities of the world. And hold on one second. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I have it on mute, but
It's okay.
you can edit it, right?
She'll edit it out. Meet is great. Our technical director is great. Um, I, yeah, so now here you are in the business world. Like you said, you went to school in the Midwest and then you came to Miami, kind of surprised your grandmother, right? Suddenly going into real estate and business.
No,
Uh,
I think what surprised her is I moved to Argentina and
oh, you
then,
did? Didn't know
yeah, I
that.
moved to
Yeah.
Argentina to do an exchange program. And after 6 months, I called her and I was living with an Argentinian family that only served beef 3 times a day. I ended up, going from being a vegetarian to eating Argentinian steak at the family that I was living with, which was a humble family, and it was a single mom with her son. And I had an amazing eye-opening experience. I was 98 when Madonna was filming Evita and Carlos Menem was president. And after 6 months, that was my world opening wide open culturally. And I had never been,
Mm,
even in, I was in a conservative suburb in Chicago when I went to Northwestern,
mm,
Evanston. I really didn't like it because it was cold and it was very segregated. And, I didn't feel connected, to culturally to a northern, predominantly white suburb of Chicago. And so I went to Miami to do an internship at MTV Latino, spend time with my adopted father, ended up in Argentina after 6 months. And yeah, so then I ended up having to look for a job, and I found a job pretty quickly. And in a nightclub in a resto lounge in Argentina, which happened to be the hot spot of Buenos Aires at the time. And I met the president and Madonna and kind of the who's who of Latin America at the time. And that changed my whole life, And I was, next thing you know, I was skiing, and from the sleeping on the temple floor to skiing in Bariloche and going to Carnival in Brazil and going to Punta del Este and really getting to experience a whole different side of the world, which I really liked quite a lot. And came back to Miami, and then Miami, I continued in nightlife and became a promoter and VIP director, and used to run Crowbar, the biggest, most important nightlife spots in Miami. And I met an incredible, group of people. And then I got into real estate. And that's when I started to kind of evolve my career into real estate, after I had my stint in nightlife and hospitality. And there's one moment where I actually did a fundraiser for my grandmother, for the ashram, at a house on North Bay Road, a star-studded event. And then we brought, all the swamis and the ashram people back to the nightclub. So that was quite a convergence of cultures. And yeah, so that was the beginning of kind of the confluence of, both worlds coming together, the material world, the spiritual worlds, and all of them converging.
So how are you able to manage that? Because I find that many people, that's very hard, they're caught up in their business and they'll say they don't have time to have a spiritual life, or it doesn't seem to make sense in the world that's so, about just making more money and making more money. You're able to blend the two, bring the two together and keep moving and doing so much. So for you, is it just natural because that's the way you were raised?
No, I think, listen, it's challenging. It's hard to, keep your practice going. It's hard to, stay in a, detached spiritual place when you're dealing with a lot of different challenges and business issues and, stresses of the real world, of the modern world. And, it actually requires discipline to maintain that connection with self and really with our inner nature and the nature that surrounds us. And so I think being at Chosen more, which my wife and I, Jimena, split our time between Chosen and Miami, really helps me reconnect. And there's a lot of great programming that we're doing at Chosen, from breath work to wellness programs to different, cleanses and,
Beautiful.
meditations, that it helps just being immersed in that. And so it's combining, my business experience with my spiritual experience. And I think that's really where we're kind of getting to in the world, is this need for conscious capitalism or an evolution of the current system. And so I think I'm uniquely trained or uniquely educated in how to accomplish, success in the way that it's successful for all of the people involved, the people, the planet, having a purpose. And so that's really what our mission is at Cho Ventures, my family office, is really to invest in, accelerate, and elevate, the people, the places, predominantly underserved communities that we're working in Jacksonville, we in Miami as well, a little Haiti. We're doing a lot of work with the Haitian community here at our events and other workshops. And we have 3 nonprofits that are based in the Future of Cities Hub. So a lot of work that we're doing for the community and with the community and by the community, both here, at Chosen and in Jacksonville. And I'm proud to say that we secured a grant with the USDA to do fleet farming, which is organic farming and education for food insecure seniors. And so we're growing food, we're educating people about composting and about organic farming and teaching classes. And so I'm very proud of the work that we're doing there.
You must be very fulfilled. I know, like you say, the business world can be tough, but I always feel that as long as a person keeps their spiritual perspective and maybe some kind of practice that they have, then the world out there of business and making money or success, it might not be money for some people, it's just success, or being well known or whatever. It's not the most important thing. They realize there's something else that's driving them. So do you feel when you get up in the day every morning, or that's what's driving you, is that, okay, how can I, because what I'm hearing from you is, how can I serve others? What can I do to make our communities better and to create change? That's what I see with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the most fulfilling thing to do if you can. But what I'm trying to demonstrate is that you can actually make money by doing the right thing, that it's not just philanthropy. this is what I call impact investing, and it's really about investing with conscience and with consciousness and with intention, and really being creative in the way that we look. A lot of the work we're doing is in affordable and workforce, and turning food deserts into food forests, and bringing joy, and really focusing on independent brands, right? So I think that's the butcher, the baker, the barber, the heart and soul of Main Street is really what we're looking at promoting.
You feel like if you can have an effect on mainstream, and mainstream is changing, not all of it. We certainly read a lot of stories about the degradation of mainstream or the business world, but there are people like you, and I'm sure you meet a lot of them, that have been successful or are successful, and yet they know they're there for a higher purpose. They just know, right? To do good.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I know we're out of time, and I didn't want to take too much of your time, because I know you're busy, but I just wanted to share, maybe you forgot, maybe you didn't even know, but how I came to meet you was I was sitting in a vegan restaurant with my good friend, who Star, and we were sitting in a vegan restaurant in Miami, and there's a woman right next to me. The room was so small, and I started to talk to her, and she tells me about her spiritual life, and we talk about, her husband's also into a spiritual life, and her name is Shamina, your wife. That's how we met. And the next thing we talked, and then I said, oh, I can't believe it, because I have actually been to the ashram. I was there with Ma Jaya and Daddy Janki, our spiritual leader. And I don't know if it was 200 people. We were there. It was an incredible experience for us all to be there together. And your grandmother made it happen. And we took classes from her. So I'm going to let you go. But then I ended up, Jamina invited us to come teach meditation, at your office.
I remember that. That was wonderful. I remember that.
So you were always, I don't want to say open, you were always, this was part of your life, and Jamina too, obviously. And that's a beautiful thing. Sometimes it's one person or the other. The husband is into a spiritual on a path, or the wife, and they're not both, and the two of you together makes it super, super meaningful. And not just that, but the impact that the two of you can make, to me, is just a beautiful thing. So we are out of time. And like I said, I know that you're into so many things. We could talk all day with all that you've learned and done, but I think I know myself, I really got more of a sense of what it is you believe in. And I hope when people watch this, they can feel they can do something,
Yeah, and that's the idea. We can all do something, and it starts with ourselves, and just being in right relationship with ourselves, with community, with each other, with nature. And I think that that's really, I always love this quote by Rumi that said, yesterday I thought I was clever and I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise and I want to change myself. And so I think that's really, because I'm very outwardly trying to impact a lot of communities. And so you have to always constantly remind yourself that the change starts within, and it starts with us.
And that's it. There's nothing more important, because you can't change the world, like you just said, if you're messed up inside. But that's a process too. We could talk for hours about that, but to start, I think that to me is what's important, and that you're helping so many. So thank you so much, Tony. Really,
it's been
great.
It's a pleasure being with you. I love the work that you're doing, and we should definitely have you come and teach another meditation class sometime soon.
We would love to.
You have to come by the New York City's Climate and Innovation Hub in Little Haiti, our new space. It's really special.
Oh yes. Well, I was there. Isn't that with Dan Neville?
Oh, you came to Dan's event. Yeah,
that was
wonderful.
Not the last one. Before, that's when we met. We started talking, but
well, now we have a community garden that we partnered with Little River Cooperative. We have a trellis outside, and we have a wellness space with a meditation pod with our partners from Open Seed. So there's a lot of expansion and growth that's happened since you were here last. So I'm going to continue to welcome you again.
I will be back, definitely, and I'm sure I'll be back with some of my friends, my spiritual friends, some amazing
Please
people
do. And come visit us at Chosen. We're doing full moon monthly gatherings. We're doing all kinds of great events. So
I would love it. Yeah. So thank you so much, Tony, for taking time.
Likewise.
And we'll meet again.
Have a beautiful day.
Om Shanti. We say I'm peace. I'm peaceful. I'm a peaceful soul. Om Shanti.